right, so let's jump right in. One of the stats that really popped out from all your research, 26% of women would actually pay their partner to carry in the groceries.
Wow.
That's kind of crazy, right? But I guess it does make you wonder about, how we look at the value of tasks in relationships these days. Like, what do we consider work, and how does that all play out? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to dive into all sorts of fascinating stuff today, from how much we drink at the office to even some surprising links between biology and, well, let's just say interesting correlations.
It's going to be a fun deep dive for sure. That grocery statistic, right off the bat, it just makes you think about how things are shifting. Are traditional roles flipping, or is it just a sign of the times, people prioritizing different things based on their own lives and their own relationships? It really makes you curious about how these kind of valuations play out across other parts of our lives. And luckily, you've got some sources that touch on exactly that.
You're not kidding. Like this one, the average worker downs drinks at the office 19 times a week. 19? That's like, almost 4 times a day?
That's a lot of trips to the water cooler.
Right. So looking at some of the stuff you've got on workplace trends, what could this mean? Are we just that thirsty? Or could it be about those little breaks for connection, socializing, or even just a way to cope with the pressure cooker of the modern workplace?
That number, actually, it kind of lines up with research on productivity. Short, regular breaks can really help with focus and prevent burnout. And you're right, it could also be about those social interactions. Maybe we're not taking those long lunches anymore, so we're grabbing those little moments of connection wherever we can. Like some of your sources say, the way we work is changing, and so is the way we socialize at work.
Makes you wonder what other little habits are evolving. Speaking of which, apparently Gen Z thinks scrolling on your phone with your index finger is, a sign you're old.
Oh, no.
Right. It's so funny how technology creates these little generational divides, like overnight.
It really shows how fast things change. What's fascinating is how such a small thing, a simple gesture, can suddenly become a way of signaling age. It really highlights these constant cultural shifts that technology is driving, like the articles you have on social media trends always emphasize.
And those priorities, they just keep on shifting as we get older. You found some research on relationships that shows while looks might be a big deal for younger couples after 50, kindness takes the top spot. Makes sense, right? As we think about what really makes for a lasting connection.
Yeah, totally. And it aligns with a lot of the research on long-term relationships. What we need and what we value in a partner, it changes as we go through different phases of life.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that the focus would shift from those more superficial things to qualities that really matter for happiness and support. Emotional connection, like you see in so many of those relationship studies.
Now, for something completely different, prepare to be surprised. There's this statistical correlation between male chest hair and, wait for it, potential intelligence.
You're kidding?
Yep. It's important to remember we're talking correlation here, not causation. But still, it definitely makes you think.
It does. These kinds of correlations, they often pop up because of shared genetic or hormonal factors. Things that influence both traits, even if one doesn't actually directly cause the other. It just reminds us that statistics can show us some interesting patterns, but they don't always tell the whole story.
Definitely. Switching gears again, here's one for you. The average household goes through roughly 12 bottles of moisturizer a year.
12 bottles.
12 bottles could be all about those self-care routines becoming more popular, right? Or maybe it's just reflecting those wider trends in the beauty market.
Probably a bit of both, honestly. Could also be interesting to dig into how that varies across different groups of people and where they live, like some of those market analysis articles you've got.
Good point. All right, time for another household task showdown. Apparently, women clean windows monthly, while men do it about once a year. That's a big difference. Any thoughts on what's behind that?
It probably comes down to the way chores have traditionally been divided in the home, and maybe even different ideas about what clean really means for certain tasks. Social and cultural stuff often plays a huge role in these patterns, like we see in a lot of sociological studies.
Okay, this one's for anyone who's ever had a little too much fun on a night out. Reader's Digest suggests some hangovers can linger for up to 4 weeks.
4 weeks? That seems a bit extreme.
Right. That's a long time to pay for one night. But it makes you think about the impact, right?
Yeah, it definitely highlights that even if it's not 4 weeks for everyone, those effects can last a lot longer than just the morning after, like a lot of health and wellness experts point out.
Here's one that I think a lot of people can relate to. Over 25% of women would rather get their wisdom teeth yanked than go swimsuit shopping. Ouch.
Ouch is right. But it speaks volumes about how we feel about our bodies and how we see ourselves.
It's so true. It's like all that emotional baggage we can attach to certain activities and experiences, and how much society's ideas about beauty can weigh us down.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure out there.
No kidding. Okay, time for a more lighthearted one. Did you know that globally, kids spend something like 5 billion hours a year playing with Legos? That's a lot of building and imagining.
5 billion. That's mind-boggling. It really shows how universal and timeless Lego is. You know, it's not just a toy. It's like a cultural phenomenon that sparks creativity and imagination across generations, like all those experts on childhood development talk about.
Speaking of universal experiences, it seems we can all agree on the most annoying things people do while driving.
Let me guess. Tailgating.
Nope. Even worse, texting while driving and parking in handicapped spots when you're not supposed to. It's like those are the ultimate driving sins.
Yeah, those are definitely up there. It's interesting though, right? Because it shows that we all share these values about safety and being considerate of others. Those behaviors, they really push people's buttons because they're dangerous or just plain disrespectful.
Absolutely. Here's a seasonal stat for you. 35% of women say they do more laundry in the summer. Makes sense, right? More time outdoors, more activities.
Makes total sense. It's all about how our lifestyles change with the seasons, right? Mm-hmm. More outdoor fun, maybe more sports, and definitely more changes of clothes because it's so hot.
Exactly. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Literally. According to Parents Magazine, mommy, daddy, and more are usually the first words babies learn.
Oh.
It's like a little window into their world, isn't it?
It really is. It highlights who those primary caregivers are and that basic human need for more, you know. It's fascinating to think about those very first stages of language development.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, it's not all cute baby talk. Body image can have a real impact on our intimate lives. 20% of women have avoided sex because they felt too fat. That's heartbreaking.
It is. And it just shows how deeply body image issues can affect women's well-being and relationships. You know, there's a lot of pressure to look a certain way, and it can really take a toll.
So true. And finally, it seems a lot of us are hooked on that caffeine fix. 37% of Americans think they'll burn themselves out on Starbucks at some point this year.
37%. Wow. I guess it makes sense, though. Coffee is practically a way of life for many people.
It really is. It's like we depend on it to power through our days, and it makes you wonder about those long-term effects, you know? Maybe it's time to rethink our relationship with coffee, or at least find some healthier ways to manage our energy.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from chores and hangovers to Lego empires and even body image. But stepping back and looking at all these fascinating facts, what bigger picture patterns do you see? What connections are we maybe missing in our everyday lives and relationships? It's pretty amazing to think about how all these little data points come together to shape our experiences in ways we might not even realize.
It really is. And that's the beauty of these deep dives. They force us to look at the world in new and unexpected ways.
Exactly. And that's why we do what we do. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.